Hello, everybody. Welcome to the world of Formula One with me and Delucia Daniels. Magic for Charles Leclerc, magic for Ferrari to win at Silverstone. I mean, the home of Formula One, that's where it all began. Ferrari's first ever victory came in 1951 at Silverstone. So, a very, very special place for a Ferrari driver to win and sort of reignited. Yes, he's had some unlucky moments. However, a lot of it has also been self-inflicted this specific season. But all of a sudden, those 25 points, and now all of a sudden he's probably a little bit in the game, because I think going forward, we are going to see some penalties coming for various engine components to various teams. It's going to be it's unfortunately going to happen. It could happen to Red Bull, could happen to Mercedes, could happen to Ferrari, but somewhere along the line, I think we're going to start seeing some of these errors that are going to come through on the engine or power unit side. So this championship is very, very much alive. And Kimi Antonelli just having, I mean, also just as unlucky in the last three Grand Prix that you cannot believe. So from 70 odd points, it's down to one race victory. That's what it is. It's 25 points in the championship. So everything is to play for. And I wouldn't discount anybody going down, maybe even as far as Max Verstappen, in terms of this title race. So it's all to play for. Both Ferraris are in it. Both Mercedes are in it. And probably Max Verstappen. McLaren, I unfortunately don't see them fighting back in terms of fighting for the Drivers' Championship.
It's interesting because I would argue against that and say, yes, Oscar and Lando have had quite tumultuous seasons. One race it's been, we're getting a lot of points, and the next race we're out, there's a failure of some sort. I think with Lando, something ridiculous. He's had a few DNFs this season as well. But I think if you look at where they were in Silverstone, they weren't too bad. They just weren't competitive in comparison to everyone else. Again, running their own
Mm.
race. But in terms of just the drivers' ranking, I mean, Kimi Antonelli, like you said, you've nailed that. It's 25 points. And what is that between teammates? We've seen this story before. And we've got two more races before the summer break. I think that it is all to play for, and everybody's just putting everything in their hat to try and win as many races and collect as many points as possible. What I've loved seeing is the resurgence of Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton is still very
Mm.
much in the fight. He's just a few points behind
Yes.
George Russell. Lando Norris is also in there. So I don't know. I feel like everything is very much still up in the air, primarily because things are also going to change coming out of the summer break. There are going to be new developments coming out. People are bringing brand new packages as well. So I'm really curious to see how everyone's going to fare, because so far it does seem like Ferrari has kind of brought it to Mercedes a bit. You know, out of the two Mercedes drivers, I still think Kimi Antonelli is leaps and bounds ahead of George Russell in terms of pure pace. I think that
Yeah.
Kimi has just been really great in comparison to George. It's just like you said, been a series of unfortunate events over the last few Grand Prix. But then on the other hand, you have someone like Max Verstappen, who is trying his best with what he has, and Isaac Hadjar as well in the Red Bull. But at the same time, you don't have the same finesse and smoothness as the other teams have. I feel like there's been a lot of bumps in the road. I mean, Verstappen saying, he actually just wanted a brand new engine for the last race. It would have been so much easier than what he
Yes.
was currently driving. And the incident that he had as well with his rear wing and the crash. It's just kind of like, we're getting to that phase as well, Sash. Well, we haven't even gotten into it yet, but silly season. Who's going where?
Yeah.
Is Oscar Piastri going to leave McLaren? Is Verstappen going to McLaren? Is he going to initiate his exit clause and leave Formula One for good? Those are still questions that we have yet to answer, and the season is still long. I mean, I think we're only on like around 11, so
Mm.
it's a long way to go.
We have got a long way to go, but you're talking of Max Verstappen. So let's go in it. There's this cacophony of rumor that is around at the moment that Max Verstappen has been in conversation. His managers, well, his dad, but Vermeulen, and they've been in conversation with the likes of McLaren, and then there's Oscar Piastri going, well, you know what, he's not British, so. They're going to favor someone like Lando Norris. My personal opinion, I do not see Max Verstappen leaving Red Bull for McLaren. If there was a team that he was going to go to, there's only two options, in my opinion, he's got is Ferrari and Mercedes Benz. I just somehow don't see him going to McLaren, and I don't see Zach Brown or Andrea Stella all of a sudden just tossing out either Lando Norris or Oscar Piastri. However, Lando Norris, even though he's sort of fighting back and clawing his way into the championship, seems to be this sort of, well, I've got a world championship and maybe I'm going to go and sit in a yacht somewhere. Has he got that desire? Has he got that motivation? Winning a world championship is a huge thing. We saw with Nico Rosberg, he pulled out immediately. There's so much pressure on it. And is Lando still the fighter? And he's too young, in my opinion, to leave. So, in my opinion, I don't see Max Verstappen leaving Red Bull for McLaren unless something dramatic happens in the off season, in the sense of the summer break. Besides that, I see Max staying exactly where he is until there's an opening that comes up at Mercedes or Ferrari.
And, with the lineups at Ferrari and Mercedes, it doesn't look like they're going to let up their drivers either. I think that Lewis and Charles have made a fantastic team this season so far. And Kimi and George, I mean, you've got a future world champion sitting between the two of them. And they've invested a ton into both of them. I don't think they're going to let them up anytime soon. Although, I'm sure if Max Verstappen becomes available, it'll probably be like a tug of war with Max just trying to claw his way out, trying to see which is the best offer to get the most money, probably, and the best car,
But who
essentially. I think with
but who can afford him? I mean,
I was
who can afford Max Verstappen? He's unfortunately, in a way, he's outpriced himself because he's so good that is $100 million enough?
hmm. Well,
I
they
don't
look at
know.
Aston Martin. They've got probably the most capital, but still the least that they've done on
Yeah,
track to show for it. So they're probably the ones to be able to afford him and give him a really great deal. But we've seen that not everything is sunshine and roses at that department. And I also feel like where Max is now and what he's doing in GT3, for example, and moving out of Formula One and focusing on other racing, I feel like that's also been really good. Maybe just to keep him a bit more stimulated, because maybe Formula One isn't doing that for him as it has done for the past decade that he's been in the sport. But yeah, I think Max is still young. He's not even 30 years old yet, which is crazy. To be able to have won 4 championships before you turn 30, to have been able to build the legacy that you have, is incredible. Lando, on the other hand, I think that he's just taken a step back because the package that they have at McLaren is not at all competitive in comparison to everyone else. So you just kind of make do with what you have, but at the same time, I do think that hunger is there. I think we've seen it in some races, but it's very hard to chase the pack when you're not even part of the pack. You're outside of the pack. You're a bystander. So I think that just makes it a bit difficult to fight back. And I'm sure when you're coming in as a reigning world champion, it must be so frustrating knowing that you cannot defend your title because there's nothing you can do about it. You're trying your best. You are competing at an incredibly high level, but if your car doesn't do it for you, as you've seen in many previous world champions, you look at Fernando Alonso, for example, if you don't have the right car, you're not going to be able to compete with the best of the best and get a second one.
well, the thing about it is because we've got these rubbish regulations, and that's it. There's no other way to call it. We saw it in Silverstone on the TV. I feel desperate. I mean, I listen to the Sky commentary. I know there's a lot of people who listen to F1 TV commentary, and probably people who speak foreign languages listens to their own commentary. But I listen to the Sky commentary, and I listen to David Croft and Martin Brundle, and I feel desperate for them because they're trying to make something seem exciting when the true people who know something about Formula One know that this is completely artificial. It is just unfortunately the nature of the beast. They are putting different kinds of software so that the battery recharges at a specific point on the track and then hopefully gives them a little bit of impetus going forward. It looks like a real overtake, but it's not really a real overtake. And the sooner that they get rid of this, and I know that in only 2 or 3 years, we're looking at a 60-40 split, um, it just is not real racing. It just unfortunately is completely artificial. If you watched any of the sessions, free practice, the sprint race was not too bad, but the main race actually was better than the sprint race. But if you just sit there and watch these cars going, and the next minute they've got absolutely no power, and then somebody comes flying past them, it just doesn't make any sense at all. And it's frustrating. And now this weekend, we're going to Spa Francorchamps. And I'm going, will people make it up or through Eau Rouge up the bottom onto the Kemmel Strait without all of a sudden waving at everybody, having an espresso coffee or whatever until they get to the corner? Because it's not going to look good. I hate to tell you, it's not going to look good this weekend in Spa.
It's interesting because if you are a non-traditional Formula One fan, you don't see this on track. All you're seeing is constant back and forthing because there is a lack of also information I noticed during their battles. I would have loved to see when each car was deploying their battery, when they were able to use their boost mode, because we don't get to see that. So all we're seeing is constant chopping and changing throughout the entire Grand Prix, which is great as a non-traditional Formula One fan. You're just
Oh,
seeing action on track, but I think when you actually look down at the nitty gritty of everything, there is a lot of flack that obviously the new regulations have taken on over the last year. But at the same time, it does beg the question of, is it entertaining? Sash, unfortunately, it is for most people. Most people who aren't diehards. But at the same time, I, as someone who's sitting there, I'm like, I would love to see the battery deployment differences. I would love to see when everybody is activating these things and when they're harvesting, because all I'm seeing is just, okay, there goes George Russell, but there goes Max Verstappen. And then here comes Charles Leclerc. And everyone is just doing different strategies all the time. It becomes a bit like, okay, well, we already know Kimmy's coming down the road, so he's probably going to overtake that person, when the battery's at the right level. But yeah, I think also visually, and the broadcasters should probably work on this, would be to include that so that we can actually see what's going on behind the scenes and which buttons they're clicking, because we're essentially watching a video game just with real people playing this game.
yes. So, and I know I'm giving it a little bit of stick, but if one does look at a slightly positive angle of this, is that all of the teams, all of the drivers have exactly the same issue. So it is a question of now strategy. It is a question of tactics. When do we deploy? How do we harvest as much as we can? Um, but I can tell you that, Delucia, if you and I were in the stands at Spa Francorchamps this weekend, up at Le Coup, or coming through Stavelot, the first corner, and then Eau Rouge up to Radion, and then to Le Coup, you will noticeably watch these cars lift and coast 150, 200, 250 meters way before they actually hit their normal braking point. Now, on television, yes, it looks cool, and you spot on. For the millions of new people sit and say, "Wow, this is so amazing." But for those of us who've been around just a little bit longer, we sitting there going, "Whoa, this is just not." I mean, you cannot tell me that a driver is loving the fact that his foot is planted on the fast pedal, and they can't go any faster. They are 500 horsepower down. Um, so yes, I know that everyone has to try and mitigate um, the issues that they have, and they have got to try and deploy. But I mean, is this now, as you say, is this now a TV game where, okay, let's just set up the algorithm for the battery redeployment, and when you lift off
Yeah.
the brake, how much power is actually going to come in, as opposed to actually flat out racing? Where is the flat out Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen going for pole position? That's where that's what we want to see, as opposed to 40-kilometer difference in speed when one car overtakes another one. That's not real.
Especially
That's
when you're going to a track
fabricated.
like especially at a track like Spa, which is a fan favorite. It's also a driver's favorite. It's a fast track. There's so much acceleration. It's the elevation changes. It's everything that we want, to see in racing. And I can imagine them going there now, working on the simulator. It must be really frustrating because it is now this is no longer muscle memory of how we used to race. You have to think about everything else now and how the computer and the car are going to work together to be able to maximize the result that you're going to get. So, I mean, going into the Belgium Grand Prix this weekend, I'm really excited. I will say, last year it was McLaren 1-2. It was a wet race. There was a lot going on last
Yeah,
year, but I think at the Belgium Grand Prix, you always never know. You're basically in the middle of nowhere. And I think that this time out, is the heat wave going to affect anything? We saw that the heat wave didn't affect too much when we were at Silverstone this
no.
past weekend. So I think this time out, it will be quite interesting to see who's going to be on top. I do think for this particular race, for some reason, I'm feeling like it's going to be Kimi Antonelli that's going to pull something out the bag. It's just a matter of, can the car hold itself together in order to produce the results that we need to see from the championship leader.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting race in the sense of deployment. But try and think of it like this. Imagine you're riding an e-bike and you're going up a mountain. Okay. And if you use the turbo mode on every single climb, okay, the battery will empty long before you reach the top. So you have to decide where to spend that extra boost. And that's exactly what Formula One drivers are going to have to do the whole of this weekend, is when to deploy, how to deploy. And as I said, yes, I think, from an engineer's point of view, they probably love this. Oh, man, we're going to set it here. And when he lifts off there, that's how much he's going to get. How hard do you brake going into the corners? So I think there's going to be trying to be a tremendous amount of defense going into Leclerc, which is a very great overtaking part. And you're going to see probably get a couple of 5-second penalties for moving on the braking line. As much as I'm a little bit frustrated by it all, I'm actually also very excited to see how these drivers and these engineers work out the tactical side of where to deploy, how to get or harvest their energy. I know that they've got 5 power mode zones where you can overtake, where you've got the push to pass button, but you've got to be within the 1 second um,
Yeah.
distance of the driver, and you've got to hopefully have a little bit of power. So it's going to be fascinating, but pure, not too sure.